This is the all-new 2023 Honda CRV. And you know what's crazy about these? They've sold almost 6 million of these since the inception of the CRV. So it's quite a popular model, and to be honest, I could see why. After driving the last one, I really enjoyed it. So I'm quite keen to see what they've done with this latest model. So what we're gonna do today is take a look outside. Inside, I'm gonna show you some of the features and technology. I'm gonna try and throw a bike in the back to see how usable or not it is. And then last but not least, we're gonna take it for a spin out on the road to see what it's like. Let's start first with styling of the CRV, because clearly Honda has taken a different direction on this car compared to the last model. Now previously, it was slightly skewed towards female buyers. There were more female buyers than male buyers with the last generation, and clearly they've tried to appeal to a more male audience. When you look at the front with this hexagonal grille and slightly squinty lights, it just looks slightly more aggressive than the last model, which admittedly looked quite quirky. And of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so it is up to you to whether you like the styling of this or not. If you ask me, I think it's been quite successful. I don't know if I'm the target demographic for this vehicle or not, but I think it looks way better and much more appealing to me personally than the last model. We're seeing it here in Canyon River Blue, and it always cracks me up the names that they come up with these colors, but it is truly quite a beautiful color, very dark and low light, but when you get some sun on it, some incredible flake comes out, and it's quite a nice and a bit unique color in the space. And also worth noting that you're seeing it here in the Sport Hybrid trim. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Regarding wheels and tires, here we have some 19-inch blacked out, as you can see, wheels here on Continental cross contact tires. I'll be curious to see how the 19-inch wheels ride out there on the road. Under the hood of the CRV, specifically this hybrid model, is where things get kind of interesting. Now, with a standard model, you can get a lower displacement 1.5 liter turbocharged engine that makes around 190 horsepower. This, though, being the hybrid, is a two-motor setup, as they call it. You have a naturally aspirated 2-liter engine, gas engine, coupled with an electric motor, combining for 204 horsepower. Now, you don't really care about the horsepower if you're buying the hybrid model, right? You care about fuel economy. Well, with this all-wheel drive model, you're getting 40 miles to the gallon city and 34 on the highway. Those may seem like strange numbers, right? Because typically you get better fuel economy on the highway, right? But with hybrids, they're more efficient in the city because they can regenerate a lot of this energy when you come to a stop, when you deaccelerate. So that's why you're getting better fuel economy in the city versus the highway, specifically with the hybrid models. Now, once again, this is the all-wheel drive version, so you can actually get this hybrid model in a front-wheel drive only version with a slightly better fuel economy. Hopping inside the CRV, we get to experience what is some of my favorite parts of the new Hondas in general. There's this new design language that they've put in basically all their products. Obviously slight variations here and there, but it's essentially the same design. And I really, really like it because it's so clean and simple and easy to use. In a day and age of giant screens where everything's behind 20,000 menus, having physical buttons, having things that are just intuitively laid out like this car is just so refreshing. So companies like Subaru, please take notice. When I want to turn on my heated seats, I just want to hit a button and just cycle through it that way. I don't want to have to go through a menu structure on a screen. Same thing with the HVAC controls. I can spin this knob. There's things like audio controls. I get to turn a knob here. It just makes sense, and it seems like something that we've taken for granted for such a long time, of just being able to get a car and be able to use it. But like I said, when cars have gone to these massive screens with menu structures and you have to have this crazy learning curve to learn how to use it, this is very refreshing. So not only is it sleek, it's clearly very well made. Things, for the most part, are quite sturdily mounted, so it feels like it's going to last as well. You also get things like these very comfortable seats. So these seats are quite wide. They're going to fit a wide variety of people, but they're supportive and they're made out of this leatherette material, which feels of good quality for the money. The rear seats as well, quite usable for actual human beings. I'm 6'1", and I can fit back there sitting behind myself with plenty of leg room and even a few inches of headroom. Additionally, those seats actually recline. You can adjust how much they are reclined, which is quite nice. So you can actually enjoy sitting in the back of this car, not just put up with sitting in the back of this car. A couple other things worth noting. Steering wheel is a great shape and size, nice sleek design. The gauge cluster is half digital, half analog, speedometer being analog, the rest being digital. It shows you all kinds of things and power output because this is, a gas and hybrid engine. We're not strictly talking about revs of the gas engine, but it just makes sense. I think the only thing I can really complain about here is that the backup camera isn't of the highest quality. It seems like something that is quite a few years old, but I'm really quite nitpicking because the rest of this interior, as I've already mentioned, with all Hondas, is fantastic. And I would be happy to stay and live with this interior day in, day out.
Now is time for everyone's favorite bike test. To my surprise, I was not able to fit my 29er extra large mountain bike in the back without taking the front wheel off. Ultimately, although this is a fairly big SUV compared to previous CRV generations, the rear opening is just a bit too narrow. Keep in mind that this is a huge bike with extremely wide handlebars. I would consider this worst case. After abandoning the mountain bike, you can see just how easy it is for me to fit a normal sized bike in the back. And of course, if you enjoy the bike test or these reviews in general, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button at the bottom so you don't miss future content.
Now we get to drive the CRV and see what it's actually like out here on the road. Now, with videos like this, I always like to start with a thing that I notice first when I drive a vehicle, because there's always something that stands out immediately. And with some cars, it's the engine. With some cars, it's how it rides, maybe how it sounds or something like that. With the CRV, specifically, of course, the hybrid, which one we're in, it's all about the electrification. I don't know if you can notice, but we're basically just rolling around in electric mode right now. And it's so quiet. You get basically all of the benefits, or a lot of the benefits that you would get with an electric car with this vehicle. And that's because of the way they've sort of designed it. This is sort of a unique hybrid in that it's a little bit different than the way, for example, Toyota approaches hybrids. This is a two-motor hybrid system where essentially what they're doing is mostly using that gasoline engine as a generator to generate electricity, while it can also be coupled with the wheels through an eCVT system. It's all a bit complicated. We don't need to go into all the fine details, but basically what you need to know is that this car mostly wants to be an electric vehicle, or mostly wants to be in electric vehicle mode. So you get all the benefits. It's quiet, it's super smooth. This has an eCVT, so there's no shifting of any sort. It just sort of revs the engine up a little bit and gets the car going, but there's never any harshness or anything like that. So it's a very interesting experience, and like I said, it's really what you notice first about the car. And furthermore, these drive modes, you have just like a traditional shifter, park, reverse, drive, but there's a B down here at the bottom, which I'll put it into. B standing for better drive? I don't know what B stands for, but essentially B is, in my eyes, has to do something with braking, because when I put it in B, it's dialing up the regenerative braking and giving me more of a one-pedal driving experience, meaning that if you've ever experienced an electric car, they like to recuperate energy when you slow down. That's why they're so efficient. Same thing with hybrids. So you put it in B, and when you let off the gas, it sort of starts to brake for you, but that braking is actually the electric motor generating electricity. So once again, we don't need to get into the technical details, but it is an interesting addition to this car. So if you like that sort of one-pedal driving where you can, like I said, generate electricity when you let off the gas, you can put it in B. But if you just want a more traditional experience, which I kind of tend to prefer, you just put it in D. So put it in D, it drives like any other normal car. And what's cool, the last thing I'll say about it is these paddles on the shift column here, these aren't for shifting actually, they're for the regenerative braking. So I could put it in the regular D mode and drive like a regular car, but when I'm coming up to a stop or maybe I'm approaching a car that's slow, I just flick this pedal here, this left pedal on this side, and I see the regenerative braking kind of dialing up. So it's not using the car brakes, it's using the electric motor to brake the car while subsequently also generating electricity. I know I'm already super nerding out on this stuff, so forgive me, but it's really just a really cool approach, and some other manufacturers do it, but this is a slightly different implementation than, say, things like the RAV4. Specifically because the RAV4, while they do have an all-wheel drive hybrid, they just have electric motors in the rear, and they're really puny. They don't really propel the car very well in super slick or rugged conditions like this car does, because this car actually has a physical prop shaft that propels the rear wheels through a traditional differential. So I'm bringing this up mainly because now I'm located in Colorado, and this is important for people that live in inclement weather areas, because this is a more robust system for things like snow and ice and gravel and dirt. So it's worth noting because they call the RAV4 hybrid all-wheel drive, but it's a bit of a cheating thing, in my opinion, to call it all-wheel drive, being that it just has some dinky electric motors in the rear that kind of barely propel the car. So that's really the first thing that you notice with this car, and that really is what I like. I don't want to say most, because there's a lot to like about this car, but that is predominantly kind of a big deal. And, of course, you're getting better fuel economy with this kind of thing. So other than the electric motor and the transmission and everything that we've talked about, how is the rest of the car? Well, it rides really well. It feels very rigid. This chassis is clearly very rigid, and Honda has gotten quite good at safety, so it's high on the safety realm, but also with that rigidity comes, the car changes direction well, it handles body motions really well. I will say the suspension itself might be a touch firm for what I personally think that they should be doing with this car. This is mostly just for people that are driving around town. They don't need a super sporty experience. And not to say that the handling characteristics are sporty, but it is a bit lively. And on the good side of that, it feels smaller than it is. So it doesn't feel like a big boat that you're kind of maneuvering around here as we get into these twisty sections. But over some uneven pavement and potholes and stuff around town, it's maybe slightly firm. I just don't really see why they had to make it as firm as they did. I'm really nitpicking here, and as you'll find out about that as I start to talk about the pros and the cons, there just aren't many cons with this car. So I'm really nitpicking. It's not a deal breaker by any means, and in fact, I kind of enjoy it, but I think maybe for some people they would probably prefer a slightly softer ride. But everything else about this is so easy to use. I already talked about in the interior segment, you get in, everything's intuitive. I absolutely love that. The seats are quite comfortable, and also this thing is packed with technology. I really like to use the adaptive cruise control, which is a way where you can set the level of speed that you want to go. So say you want to go 70 miles an hour max, and it will maintain that speed unless somebody gets in front of you and slows down. It will automatically adjust that speed for you. So that's a really nice feature. Of course, this has the blind spot monitoring. It's packed with features, and couple that with the electric driving of this, it just makes for a quite serene experience. I just feel very calm whenever I'm driving this car. I feel very, I don't know, it's just a pleasant place to be. And I guess I should also talk about the power. 204 horsepower is, I'll say, adequate. I think it's quick enough. It's by no means a quick vehicle. Specifically around town, those electric motors make it feel quite quick because they have that instant torque. They kick on and you can kind of zip around town. I actually sometimes find myself speeding a little bit because I don't realize how fast I'm going. And then on the highway, it's adequate enough to pass. It's not underpowered, but it's not fast by any means. So in that regard, I think they did just enough to make it essentially worthwhile. But the road noise is quite quiet in here. And of course, with the mostly electric motor, specifically when we're going downhill, there's no need for the engine to be on. So you're really just kind of cruising around many times, and it's quite quiet. When that gas engine does come on, it's not too much of a distraction. You do hear it. It's a little bit buzzy, but it seems more refined, or I notice it less than I did the last generation. Maybe they've done a better job with sound isolation or sound deadening for you to not hear that, but I notice it a lot less. So I mean, really overall, it's just a no nonsense, no gimmicks car, and I guess that's a good way to sum this thing up. I think it's such a sensible and smart car because it's a Honda, so you can pretty much bet it's going to be reliable. It's super usable. I can't believe how big this thing is. It's hard to even call it a compact SUV anymore, given that I fit that 6-foot ladder in the back here this week when I was moving things around. It's really not even a small SUV anymore, but it drives small, and I think that's important to a lot of people. So it's a sensible thing. It's not flashy. It's not gimmicky, and that's really how you sum up the CRV. It's very practical from a not only space but also fuel economy perspective. And genuinely, I would recommend this car to anyone. I'm thoroughly impressed. I think that it's not flashy in any way, but it does what it needs to do by being a practical SUV at a very high level. And I think in this segment, it's probably the best thing out there, personally. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like I said, would recommend this thing to anybody, and I think you would be happy driving this around every day, using it to haul kids and using it to do your day-to-day activities. As I'm losing my voice here, seems like a good place to end. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button. Catch you guys later. Peace.